Hi everyone, welcome to the AmControl Electric School Bus Fleet 101 webinar. We're very excited to have you all here. We're going to get started in probably like 3 minutes, just to give some more time for other attendees to join as well. So go grab a cup of water or whatever you need to do, and we'll be back soon. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to AmControl's webinar, Electric School Bus Fleet 101, Funding, Benefits, and Stakeholder Involvement. We're so excited to have you all joining us today. We see some new faces and some familiar ones, so welcome. I'm Hannah Romick. I'm the content coordinator at AmControl. I help coordinate our reports, webinars, and online content as well. So if you are interested, definitely check out our website to see more resources we have about the EV market, school buses. We also have a school bus report we just posted on our website as well. I'll post a link in the chat later. But without further ado, we're going to get started. If at any time you have questions for the presenters, please feel free to use the questions chat option in your GoToMeeting, and we will try to get to those. If we don't get to those throughout this webinar, we can email you too with answers later. So today we are joined by Alissa Huntington, Research Analyst, Electric School Bus Initiative from the World Resources Institute, Ryan Earley, he's the Chief Financial Officer from Jackson County School District in Mississippi, and then Connor Tariche from AmControl, he's the Business Development Manager. So I'm going to pass it off now to the World Resources Institute and Alissa.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. I'm excited to speak with you about electric school buses today. My name is Alissa Huntington with the World Resources Institute's Electric School Bus Initiative. WRI is an independent nonprofit organization, and just the disclaimer that we don't endorse any particular brand or corporate entity. But if you go to the next slide, I'll give a little bit of an intro to WRI and then speak overall to the market status of electric school buses in general. WRI is a global research organization, and we work on a variety of climate, energy, and land-based solutions. In the next slide, you'll see that we have a really global footprint, and we're working across 60 countries, experts all over the world. But the next slide shows that for the Electric School Bus Initiative, we are primarily or predominantly working in the United States for domestic electric school bus rollout. So our vision involves equitable transition of the school bus fleet to electric by 2030 in partnership with communities and other stakeholders to bring health, climate, and economic benefits to children and families across the country. You'll see a variety of stakeholders here, ranging from school districts to manufacturers and utilities, policymakers, and local communities and community-based organizations. So we'll talk a little bit about stakeholder involvement in the question and answer portion. If you could go to the next slide, we'll talk again about some of the benefits to electric school buses in the question and answer, but the main question is why electrify the US school bus fleet? First, it can accelerate decarbonization as transportation makes up the largest contributions to greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, but then there's benefits associated with air quality and health benefits, cleaner air, reduced operating expenses, and creating a more resilient future for school districts. If you could go to the next slide, the majority of what I'll be sharing with you today is the status of the electric school bus market, giving a little bit of a market overview. This information all comes from our electric school bus market study and buyer's guide, and we'll be dropping it in the chat. It's a resource for school districts to compare across different models of electric school buses and also see what the status of the market is today. So you'll see that the first school buses, for the first electric school buses, hit the road in 2014 in California. There were 2 of them, and adoption was primarily concentrated in California early on due to a robust funding environment. But as time progressed, more funding environments or funding opportunities cropped up across different states and local opportunities, as well as utilities and other entities that came in. And then you'll see the largest jump in Q4 2022 was thanks to the federal Clean School Bus Program, which I'll be talking about in a few slides, and I know Ryan will be talking about more as well. But if you can go to the next slide, this is a chronological adoption of school buses, but here's a bit of a snapshot in time from the end of last year in December, where World Resources Institute tracks the number of committed electric school buses. So you can see that there are about 5,600 committed electric school buses across the country. That includes awarded, ordered, delivered, and operational. So there's about 1,000 actually that have been delivered and operational across the country. This is across about 900 districts or private operators like contractors. And thanks to the Clean School Bus Program, there's commitments across all 50 states, tribal nations, and United States territories. So like I had said, early adoption was in the California area, but thanks to the Clean School Bus Program, now about 1/3 of committed electric school buses are in the South. And what's really exciting is to see both this federal growth and state adoption. And I want to note that New York made history as the first state in the nation to commit to electrifying its entire electric school bus fleet, passing legislation that requiring that all new school bus purchases be zero emissions by 2027, and all buses in operation be zero emission by 2035. So if you'll go to the next slide, this is an indication of the impact of the federal Clean School Bus Program, thanks to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was signed into law in 2021. It's providing an unprecedented amount of funding to school buses with $5 billion available for zero or lower emission school buses. So if you go to the last slide, this is the last slide I'll be sharing, or second to last, but to meet the growing demand, we see the supply chain really ramping up. You'll see a couple bullets on the left-hand side of manufacturers expanding facilities, introducing new facilities, building them out across the country to meet this growing demand. So the last slide shows an array of different school bus models. There are 22 electric school bus models available as of last year. We're currently in the process of updating this tally. But we offer a number of different resources. One of them is this buyer's guide that allows school districts to compare across different school bus options and measure specs to see what might meet their needs, especially as they're considering new details like battery size, charging time, what kind of charger will work with their school bus. So I'll leave it there and I'll pass it over to Ryan for a little bit on the actual school district perspective. And I'm really excited to chat with you in the question and answer.
Thanks, Ryan. You can take it away.
All right, thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Alissa. Hi, all. Good afternoon, I believe, in all parts of the country. My name is Ryan Earley, a school finance officer for the Jackson County School District. We are a district in the southern part of Mississippi on the Gulf Coast. We were one of the first school districts in the Southeast to commit to a school bus fleet, and our initial fleet pilot project is 6 school buses. Today, if you go to the next slide, Hannah, I'm going to be talking mostly surrounding the funding portion of it, but I'll begin with why did we electrify, and it's actually a little bit different than what Alissa just talked about for our particular circumstance. I'll go into some very common questions I get from my peers or others regarding the electric school buses from a funding perspective. I'll then go into current funding opportunities that are available to districts across the country, and finally I'll conclude with a funding action item checklist for those districts that are ready to take the next step. Next slide, please. So question, why did we electrify? And it may surprise some on this call, this webinar, but it wasn't necessarily ESG or decarbonization driven as maybe some other districts that were early adopters were driven by that motive. Ours was primarily an economic one, and it was supported by the Volkswagen emission mitigation grant funding opportunity. We applied for, it was a competitive grant here in Mississippi. We pursued $1.5 million grant, and we're very fortunate to receive that. And that helped support the purchase of our 6 electric school buses. And those 6 electric school buses, we project are going to save us close to $150,000 over the life of the buses. So for us, having that external funding was huge and a major force, why we went electric. Another factor supplement to that was just it's a better student and driver user experience for the students and the drivers. It's quieter and cleaner, and for those students who are maybe special needs that are sensitive to sounds or smells, it's a significantly better experience to ride the bus. And for the drivers, it's a lot quieter, and behavior in some of the early white papers suggests that it reduces behavior well. So a better experience. And thirdly, why do we electrify? I have a personal interest in the space and had the bandwidth and drive, I guess, to be crazy enough to pursue it. So those are the reasons why we electrified. And again, it might be a little bit different than most districts that were early adopters. Next slide, please. Common funding questions that I get are essentially 3 things. How much does it cost? How much does the charger cost? And how much are we going to save money? So to start with how much does the school bus cost? Alissa and the WRI team does an amazing job with their buyer's guide. I'm going to plug it here. I think it's fantastic. It should be the first resource all school districts go to reference. But in our experience with our quoting with the vendors we worked with, type A buses, your smaller buses, about 250 to 300,000. We ended up purchasing one of these at a final price of 284,000, all optioned in. Type C, Type D, we saw prices in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. Our experience, we all options $375,000 is what 5 of those ended up costing us. On the charger side, there's great variability, beginning with whether you're using AC level 2 or a DC level 3 charger. We in our district are only pursuing level 2 for the initial pilot project of these 6 buses. We're going to go to 1-to-1 configuration, meaning 1 bus to 1 charger. And there's really 2 components to this cost. You have the hardware, and then you've got the installation, the engineering, the materials that go with it. In our experience, the highest level 2 charger you're going to find generally in the US market is a 19.2 kilowatt charger, and on the hardware cost for that's around $3,000 per charger. Installation, engineering, and materials to support that can go, it's quite varied, and up to $10,000, $12,000 per charger. So In our experience, we're looking at about $70,000 to $75,000 for all 6 chargers. That includes a new meter, new transformer, a new panel. Basically, it's a clean slate. So take these costs into consideration when you're making your bus, electrification decisions. How much money can a district expect to save? In my analysis with our own data, we have a fleet of about 135 school buses. Our buses drive about 60 miles per day, 30 in the morning, 30 in the afternoon, split pretty evenly. And we keep our buses for 25 years, which is probably on the extreme end of really, squeezing every dollar out of the bus. And in our district, when you take into account the charger cost and factor that into the equation, when you take into account having to possibly replace a battery on these buses over that 25-year time frame, we still expect to save $5,500 per bus per year over the lifetime of these buses that we're buying, these 6 electric buses. We are not in a state that has net metering opportunities, so we cannot participate in vehicle to grid opportunities. But for those districts that are in those states, you can tack on another $10,000 to $15,000 to the savings I just mentioned to kind of get an idea of how much this will truly cost your district. Next slide, please. So what funding opportunities exist? You can see them there, you can snip it, but I'm going to talk really more in detail about the first 3, because those are 3 that are available to every district that may be on this call. Number 1, the operational savings I just mentioned, especially if you have external funding like we did. Number 2, the commercial EV tax credit. This is new for 23. It's a $40,000 tax credit for any bus that's over 14,000 pounds. All 6 of our buses qualify, and so it's a program that's still being developed, and the U.S. Treasury is working with dealers and manufacturers on the implementation of that program. We have not even received word on how it's going to work for us, whether it's going to be a direct payment to us or whether we're going to transfer it to the dealer that we bought our buses from and get a discount that way. And then the third thing is the Clean School Bus Program. First round is over. It already happened. It was a rebate program. It was basically a lottery. The second round just opened, and for anyone interested, there is a webinar tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern time. It's a kickoff for round 2, and round 2 is a grant program. It's going to be a competitive program. It's mainly tailored to larger districts, and I would encourage everyone to attend that. Next slide, please. For those that are ready to go, you've got the superintendent support, the school board support. This is essentially the playbook that we used here in our district to get our first 6 school buses. There's a lot of prep work involved, especially on the financial side for districts like ours where it's a financially driven decision and not a ESG driven decision. And I'm not going to go over each of these, but for those that are interested, those are 9 steps you can follow to begin your process of electrifying your fleet. Next slide. If anybody has any questions, there's my contact info. Feel free to shoot me an email and I'll try to answer. And I'm going to turn it now over to Hannah and Connor with AM Control.
Thanks, Ryan. Connor, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you for setting this up. And Alissa and Ryan, thanks for participating. Ryan's one of the most knowledgeable people in the industry we've talked to, so if you have any questions, I'm volunteering him to email him or reach out to me and we could set something up. I'll just talk about AM Control quickly. We're a little squeezed for time here, but what we do at AM Control is we're a cloud-based charge management system focused on depot charging solutions. So what that means is there isn't any additional equipment required to use our system to operate the chargers on your site. Depot charging solutions include school buses, transit authorities, ride-sharing companies, really any customer that has multiple vehicles and multiple chargers. Next slide, please. So AM Control was founded in 2019, and it's not too long ago, but in the EV space, we consider it almost like dog years because of how new everything is. So our first customer went live in December of that year, and we were deployed at the largest site in North America for our customer Revel. Now, it was the largest site commissioning. It's probably not the largest site now, but it allowed us to gain a lot of experience on what happens when you have high utilization at a specific depot. Last March, we hit a huge milestone for our company of 10,000 charging sessions managed monthly. We were awarded our first district in Jackson County last December, and we're constantly doing testing with different hardware manufacturers. because we're agnostic and we're not tied to a brand, we want to make sure that we know what's out there in the market, whether it's in the US or abroad, and make sure that our system is compatible with them. Recently, we were announced the YDV award, and they just went live with the largest truck depot in all of the United States and California. So that's another really exciting event that just occurred for AMP Control. Next slide. So what we do is we're focused on the top 3 pieces here. What this means, charge management, is having that target state of charge and allocating the buses to the appropriate route for that schedule. Energy management includes how much power you have access to in that piece of the grid and what rate structure you're under. And the third piece is having a holistic view of what's going on within your depot. Where are the vehicles connected to specific chargers? And when are the vehicles going to be charged? And when are the vehicles going to return from their routes as well? All the information on the bottom half of the screen is nice to have, and it's really the strength of our system. The more information we can gain through integrating other systems, the better we can optimize and manage the site on the site operator's behalf. Next slide. So what you see here is the energy management view. Now, it still matters for public school districts because it's the taxpayers' dollars. If it's private school bus operators, it directly affects their bottom line. But what this means is we try and charge the vehicles at the most optimal time, depending on the rate structure at that given location. And we really want to protect the batteries as well. We don't want to overcharge the vehicles if it's avoidable. And another piece of our system that really differentiates ourselves is the uptime. Now, we're working with some of the largest depots in the US and abroad, and having a system that's reliable and constantly is working properly is very essential for all fleet operators. Next slide. This is a new service we rolled out too, and this is really perfect for the school bus industry because not many operators are going to have 24/7 on-call service or someone monitoring their sites. So what we're doing for customers within the US and abroad is we're setting up a team that will have 24/7 preventative maintenance. What this means is we're going to constantly monitor what's going on at your sites. And if something's not working properly, we're going to develop the workflows to fix the problem. And it really expedite the process of what happens when something breaks. So say a connector is broken, and traditionally the site operator wouldn't find out until a vehicle has to be plugged or unplugged and they realize the vehicle wasn't charged properly. What we can do is we can expedite this process and really streamline how we solve this problem and really try and mitigate the influence it will have on the fleet's operation. Next slide. So really just to round out what we do is we connect to the chargers and we connect to other systems that the school bus fleet has. We'll monitor everything. This is pretty standard within the charge management software space, but our strength is the optimization algorithms and the performance uptime. Next slide. I think that's all I have. So Anna, if you want to open up the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Connor. Yeah, so I think at this point we have a couple questions I'd like to get to. Alissa and Ryan, you're welcome to turn on your cameras and mics again. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, again, please feel free to use the chat and send those questions and we will try to get to them if we have enough time. So to start off with the first question, this is geared towards Connor. So for AMP Control, so why should a school district consider a third-party management system?
That's a great question. And the way we look at it is that you have the vehicle, the charger, and the software piece of the solution. And because of how new this industry is, we want to focus entirely on the fleet sector of the electric vehicle mobility space. So everything that we're building and we're developing is focused on solving the problems that fleet operators like school bus operators are going to have. When it's such a new area like the electric vehicle space, if you're going after the public charging network, you're going after residential, your resources could be split, or they can be split pretty thin. And that's kind of our strength in the market, is our focus on this specific sector.
Great, thank you. Now this one is geared towards Ryan. So what do you know now that you wish you had known at the outset of your electrical journey?
Yeah, I think it's would have to be the support that there was for electric school buses. It's such a new technology. Things can be decisive in K-12 right now, and to have the community, to have teachers, to have students just support it and be a hot topic of interest within the community, being we are semi-rural, we are Mississippi. It's not the first place you would expect it. But it's gotten a ton of support, ton of traction, a ton of attention, and I would say that's the most surprising thing. The other thing is on the infrastructure costs. It's just, it's not a typical capital project where there's economies of scale. There are definitely step functions in the cost curve where you go one more charger and you're having to upgrade your transformer, your metering, your paneling, and just be aware of that and make sure you've got smart people on the front end looking at that when you're scoping out a potential project.
That's great. I'm very happy to hear that you've gotten good support too as well. Coming from a rural town myself, it's nice to know that there's some hope for the suburb I'm from to get some electrical buses at some point. Let's see. Next question is geared towards Alissa. So what stakeholders should you engage when you are working towards transitioning to EV buses?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a full team effort for school bus electrification, both internally within your school district and the partners that you choose for the buses and the chargers and whatnot, but also engaging external stakeholders. Community groups can be great advocates. Ryan, you were saying that the excitement within your community, that can be bringing in community voices for understanding maybe those who have been historically harmed by diesel exhaust, those who live by your depots or live by the routes that your buses drive, your drivers and mechanics. Those are people to really engage throughout the process because it is a new technology. It'll take a little bit of a learning curve to figure out some things like regenerative braking, which is a new factor in electric school buses that can actually recharge the bus as you're driving due to the braking mechanism. So involving some of the drivers, technicians, mechanics, maybe the unions that are representing those groups. Students can be a really great group to engage as well. We've heard of a few school districts that are bringing it into their curriculum. So getting the students really excited about what electric school buses mean. There are some districts like I think Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina has started using air quality monitors that they can give handheld air quality monitors to students to measure some of the particulate matter or diesel emissions from an electric school bus versus a diesel one right next to each other. So that could be a really fun activity with your students. Maybe parents that are in the thinking about maybe electrification solve some of the health aspects, but are there other efficiencies that parents want solved that electrification doesn't necessarily meet those needs? And then finally, I would say electric utilities are a really important stakeholder to be engaging, and as early as you can. As soon as you're thinking about going electric, we would advocate for you to start talking with your electric utility, because many school districts see the electric school bus as something they need to figure out the specs and how it operates and the dealers that they need to partner with. But the electrical infrastructure and the chargers are a completely new ballgame that school districts aren't as familiar with, and will need to work closely with their electric utility on upgrading their site's power need for meeting that new charger draw to power the buses. And oftentimes electrical upgrades can take longer than the delivery of the bus themselves. So often we hear from school districts, well, I don't want the bus to come and then it just sit there because it can't charge. So being able to start that conversation with your utility as early as you can, and looping in your charging vendor, your network provider, all of those in conversation is really important.
Great, thank you. And Ryan, just because I'm kind of curious, what was your stakeholder engagement process like for you?
Yeah, so being the first one really trying to set the path here in Mississippi, it ran the gamut from working with OEMs to the local dealer who would need to upgrade their service bays, to working with the State Department of Education to update the minimum bus standards to include electric school buses, to the legislator to add electric school buses, to what we are allowed to procure, to the local cooperative. We were the first commercial entity trying to even put in any kind of EV charger, let alone a 19.2 kilowatt and 6 of them at one site. So there's just a lot of collaboration that needed to be done, and a lot of districts, especially in semi-rural and rural areas, are going to face the same thing. So just know that there's going to be a lot of hands and a lot of collaboration, and y'all got to have to work together to really make it a successful project.
And I'll say you will probably have to meet different stakeholders in different ways or different channels of communication. So I have heard of school districts using Facebook to work with people in the community who are asking about how the electric buses operate, things like that, and definitely continuing to engage throughout the process, not just up front when you're writing a grant or something along those lines.
Thank you both. That's really good feedback. I also love the idea of engaging students. I feel like that's a stakeholder that people don't necessarily always think about with things like this. So, moving on to the next question here. So this is also for Ryan. How have you been navigating the transition from ICE to EV buses? And do you have any tips for other school districts looking to follow suit?
So how we've been navigating kind of goes back to what I just said. It's kind of been a team approach in terms of making everything happen. I would say it started out as a financial endeavor, trying to make the numbers pencil out to where we would have an economic benefit to it, and that became our driver. To now where we put in the purchase order back at the turn of the year, and now we're working on the infrastructure, putting shovels in the ground. And that requires more involvement with internal personnel, from facilities to operations to transportation, making sure we're all in agreement of siting and the details that you don't realize you need to make decisions on. And as far as tips for other school districts, at this point in time, there's plenty of early adopters to learn from. You've got great resources like what Alissa and her team puts out. You've got resources that the EPA is putting out specifically tailored and focused towards school districts. So take advantage of them, attend as many webinars as you can, have discussions with your dealers or manufacturers you want to work with, and just try to learn as much as you can and arm yourself with knowledge. One thing I will warn a lot of folks is that follow the money. There's always a conflict of interest, and don't rely on just one manufacturer, one charging company, one supplier to give you advice on what your scoping should look like. Make sure you do your own homework.
Thank you. I think that's really great advice. We also have a question I see. I'll answer that one in a few. Again, if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to add them in. I think we might have some time for them. And then, so for Alissa, the next question we have is, how can you ensure compatibility of systems and products?
This is a great question, especially, like I said, school districts are used to working with the actual school bus itself, but an electric school bus introduces new elements that might need to talk to one another. So there's also the charging infrastructure and the network provider, the cloud, and whatever is transmitting information back and forth to one another. If you work with a dealer, I would say dealers are tremendous resources who can help you go through some of the compatibility testing. A lot of OEMs will test their products, or manufacturers will test their buses with specific charging infrastructure or charge management software or other things that are in the ecosystem. So working with a dealer could be really helpful because they might have a list of products that they know work together. Asking other districts about their experience can be a really great resource, just peer-to-peer learning, word of mouth. If you have someone that has gone with one bus manufacturer and one charger and they know it worked and all the communication was back and forth, that could be a really great channel as well. And then I'll add that a tool that could be really useful is a service level agreement, which we're crafting a resource right now. So check out our website and maybe a month or so and it'll be up there. But service level agreements are agreements between a customer and a vendor that covers product operations and maintenance. And it's done typically at the same time as warranties, purchase orders, contracts. And it can do a few things. It can really help identify the appropriate party to resolve an issue if it emerges. It can have provisions for uptime, so making sure that the charging infrastructure or bus are operating for a certain percentage or a number of days per year, and maybe impose penalties if that's not met. Identifying service centers or people locally that are the best place to have those issues mitigated. So those are a few ways that you could maybe ensure compatibility or make sure that all your different elements are talking to one another.
Thank you. That's great. Connor, do you have anything to add as far as being part of like a third-party management system? I think we might be beneficial for that as well.
Yeah, really, there's so many different options out there, and there's a lot of companies that claim they do everything. And to Ryan and Alyssa's points, doing your own homework and figuring out what the best solution is for your district is very important, because a lot of times a company can provide you something that might maybe be sufficient for the first round of buses, a few buses, but once you get to scale in a few years, if that's the plan, you want to make sure that you have the appropriate companies or solution put together to make sure that you get the kids to school, because that's the most important piece.
Great. And then we another question for Alissa. So if I am a school district just starting out very early on, kind of playing with the idea of transitioning to electric school buses, and I don't know where to start, what resources would you recommend? Who should I reach out to just to try to get my footing?
Absolutely. So we have a couple resources on the website that Hannah dropped in that part of our initiative is to help create resources that will help guide school districts through their transition to electric. So we have something called the step-by-step guide to electrification that breaks down electrification into 5 different stages, including the charging infrastructure element, kind of some of the workforce development, things like that. And it gives you resources that you should be looking at during each of those stages, stakeholders you should be engaging, that kind of information. I would also say that school districts are typically limited for internal capacity. You've got a lot going on that's not just student transportation, or even within student transportation, a lot going on in the day-to-day activities. So looking for places that can expand your capacity. We offer free technical assistance, but others like the EPA, if you've been awarded a Clean School Bus Program grant or rebate, also offer some sort of technical assistance. You could also look for paid services that might help expand your internal capacity for someone who's more specialized, and offer resources like route analysis or fleet turnover analysis that might be a consulting or other service that could help expand that internal capacity.
Thank you. And now I think we actually have some time for a question that somebody sent in. So for the first question, they asked, why do electric school buses have different L2 chargers and L3 charger needs? And what factors should be considered when thinking of these 2 different chargers?
I'll take a stab. First, I would say that kind of going back to the bus and charger compatibility, be aware that not all OEMs offer level 2 charging capabilities. I believe Thomas, as a specific example, is level 3 only. So that may be overkill for your duty cycles within your district. Outside of that, it's really comes down to analysis of what the routing looks like, what the depot staging looks like, what the electrical capacity looks like at that site, and any other existing loads on that meter. That's all going to be taken into account when you decide whether you go with a level 2 charger, which is AC powered, or a level 3 charger, which is DC powered. And there's a lot of variables there to give any general advice of one or the other. But I would say just be aware that not all OEMs support level 2. And not every bus that you buy is going to be level 3 compatible either.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that level 2 primarily charges in maybe 8 to 13 hours, whereas a level 3 DC fast charger can typically charge in maybe an hour and a half to 3 hours. So depends on what your need. You can mix and match. You don't need to have just one level 2 or one level 3, or go with one or the other. But school buses are a bit unique compared to other vehicles or fleets or whatnot, where school buses do spend the overnight period sitting for 8 or so hours. So can take advantage potentially of that longer level 2 charging, but maybe need a DC fast charger in the middle of the day when you return from a morning route and need to get ready for an afternoon route, or need to charge back up before a field trip or something like that. So you can mix and match. There's a little bit of both. There are definitely elements to consider, risks and opportunities of both, but thinking that you also might want to build in some redundancy. So if a level 2 charger goes down, they're quite a bit cheaper than a DC fast charger. So you might be able to have a few level 2s on hand that you can bring in if one of them goes down and you need a backup. Whereas a DC fast charger might be a little bit more complex because it's got more robust technology and can charge a lot faster. So there are some considerations just on each of those sides. But like Ryan said, it really depends on your route needs, and maybe even within your routes, you'll have some buses that could charge on a level 2 and others that might need a quicker charge.
And to round it out from what Alissa and Ryan have said too, unfortunately, there isn't one like solution or cookie cutter solution that's going to fit every single school district. That's where Amp Control could come in and help too, kind of right sizing what equipment you need for your specific depot or for your specific district. 2 things we were talking about last week at a conference I thought was interesting too is with the level 2s, you would think it's always going to be cheaper because they're just cheaper equipment, but it really depends too, because the conduit or the wire is more expensive for the chargers or getting the power to the chargers. And then it depends on how much availability you have on your panels as well for that circuit panel too. So unfortunately, there isn't like a one solution that's the best for every district, but Amp Control could help with that too. We could run analysis on that side as well.
Great, and we have a second part to that question as well. So, or I guess it's separate, but beyond school buses, are other vehicles going to be electrified? I think this might be geared towards you, Ryan. Have you kind of led the way for Jackson County to consider some other electric vehicles?
Yeah, we're actually right now toying with the idea of a central office courier vehicle, electrifying it. Right now, I mentioned the commercial EV tax credit for school buses. Well, there also exists one for light duty vehicles and passenger vehicles, the $7,500 that school districts are eligible for as a direct payment from the Treasury. So when you consider a vehicle like the Bolt, $27,000, $28,000, $29,000 base vehicle, with that credit, bringing the cost down close to $20,000 for a brand new vehicle that's electric, that has a range of close to 250 miles. It's very compelling for us as an option. And I think you'll see us move that direction here shortly. Again, for us, it's economic driven. It's just a good use of taxpayer funds, and that's the next thing that we're looking at electrifying.
I'll say also, it's not tied to school districts, but transit electrification is a little bit further along than school bus electrification. So we've had some school districts working closely with transit agencies, mostly in cities, but learning from other fleets that are electrifying and who might have taken a few steps before them, or even sharing charging infrastructure with fleets or public charging if that's an opportunity as well.
That's a great point too, Alissa, where there's a lot of, you could talk to people within your community or different agencies within your community, because it's very likely there is a group of people or a company or some sort of electric vehicle transition that's already taken place. And being able to potentially take advantage of infrastructure that's already existing is something I think we'll see a lot of in the years to come.
Great, well, I think that's all the questions we had. So if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to email me. I believe you get a follow-up email after this webinar, and I can connect you with Ryan or Alissa. They also dropped their contact information in the chat. Anyways, I just want to say thank you so much to Ryan, Alissa, and Connor for joining us today. I think this has been really helpful. I know electric school buses for me personally are very interesting. So thank you all, and we hope to have you on one of our webinars again sometime.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.